This is the Vapes4Vets podcast brought to you by Namaste Technologies. I'm here today with Fabian Henry up in Canada. How you doing today, Fabian?
Good, Jesse. How are you?
Good. It's nice to speak to another Canadian on this podcast. I've been talking to a lot of Americans and one Irishman, so it's
Wow, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
so where are you calling from today?
Today I'm actually calling you from um, far east Canada in a place called Cape Breton. Visiting with my folks for a couple of days.
And you run and operate the organization Marijuana for Trauma, correct?
Yeah, so I founded a company, you know, helping people trying to access cannabis, primarily veterans, about 3 years ago.
And you said primarily veterans, so you work with other other people who need medical marijuana as well.
Yeah, I mean, marijuana for trauma. We feel um, specialized in PTSD, but cannabis works, as we know, for many, many, many different things. And we're not naive to think that the rest of the population doesn't need cannabinoid therapy either. So we try to help as many civilians as well as veterans. Um, it's a safe alternative to pharmaceuticals.
And you said you help them with the process to get approved. What does the process look like in Canada?
Yeah. So it can be daunting. I mean, there's a bit of paperwork involved, and first of all, you have to find a cannabis friendly physician. But there's lots of clinics and access in Canada now, but it's only legal medically, which is okay. That's what our group is focused on. But you know, to start the paperwork, somebody would have to get a referral from their doctor to one of our cannabis friendly doctors. Then they would get a prescription written from that doctor, and we have these growers in Canada. They're called licensed producers, and there's I think 40 now. So the patient would have 40 licensed producers to pick from. If they don't even know how to use cannabis or what it's really going to do to them, then it's hard to really just fire a dart and pick one. So if they have pain, we try to stick them in CBD areas. If PTSD, well then they need a variety of indicas and 1-to-1 ratio type strains. So yeah, then we educate them afterwards. They get a cannabis coach, and most people need to experiment with their medication for a little while before they get used to cannabis. And that can be scary. So if you don't have somebody to call, you don't just go pick up a prescription from a doctor and leave and never, you know, not know what to do. At least we have a place to call that can say, okay, well, you shouldn't be using sativas if you have anxiety. They cause more anxiety. You should use some CBD to reduce your anxiety. Stuff like that. Um, and yeah, we have a vape lounge, hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber. Um, you know, there's all kinds of services, but primarily we like to focus on cannabis to treat PTSD, simply because of the suicides that are happening, more rampantly in the states, but they're happening here nonetheless as well. Um,
What is the number? I've been talking to a couple of veterans in the States, and they say on average in America it's 22 a day, which is terrible. Do you know how
it,
many in Canada?
no, it's I do, yes, but it's nothing of that magnitude. 22 a day. I can't even fathom how alarm bells aren't going off in your country, in the United States, if that's the truth. That 22 veterans of the country that served for the country are killing themselves because of going to war for their government or for their country and flag. So that's alarming, that number. In Canada, um, in the entire Afghan conflict, we lost 158 men and women, and post-conflict, I think we've surpassed a death toll of 158. But it doesn't sound like a lot because we didn't deploy hundreds of thousands of troops. We deployed thousands. So the ratio is a little different.
Right.
The symptoms and the outcomes and the tragedies are no different.
And you live out in New Brunswick, but is marijuana
Yeah.
for trauma, is that across Canada?
Well, it's in 6 different provinces now. I mean, it's we didn't get as far as British Columbia or Saskatchewan, but British Columbia is fairly cannabis friendly uh, for the most part. You can access cannabis, and really the primary objective, Jesse, when we started was access to cannabis. There was no access in 2013, and when they opened the rules in 2014 uh, with this new system of licensed producers, then there became a whole lot more access, and so I'm happy about that right now.
What what
I'd
does
like
li- oh
more
sorry.
treat. I would just like to see more treatment for PTSD because cannabis is only treating the symptoms of PTSD. It's not actually getting any work done. Um, but it puts you in a good place. It's the best band-aid for your symptom to start now doing the work, like neurofeedback and EMDR and CBT therapy and stuff like that, specialized in PTSD. You can't do that kind of treatment on a regime of pharmaceuticals, SSRIs, and benzodiazepines. It's insanity. You just become a big fog, uh, zombie kind of floating around. Use a little bit of cannabis and stop using the pharmaceuticals to treat PTSD or PTSS, and a whole different outcome.
Sorry, you said PTSS. What is that?
Well, I haven't heard it here in Canada. I've heard it. I've been to the States many times now, and I've heard a lot of people calling it post-traumatic stress syndrome. They didn't want to call it a disorder for some reason.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I speak to any of the American, audience, I like to address syndrome because a lot of them address it as a syndrome, not as a disorder. So
Does, does,
regardless what name you put it, syndrome disorder, the outcome on pharmaceuticals is death by suicide, or tragedy, or a downward spiral in your life, and your family leaves, and your penis doesn't work, and you're an alcoholic or using drugs because you're avoiding dealing with your trauma, you're disassociating. Um, and then for the simple plant to understand how this works now, it's not that difficult to understand, Jesse, that we have a deficiency in receptors in our endocannabinoid system, and every human has an endocannabinoid system. When you have PTSD, you have a drop in something called anandamide and a spike in 2-AG and CB1 receptors. And the only way to level those receptors out is by using THC, and it has to be heated up to a specific temperature so it passes the blood-brain barrier in order to level out those receptors. That's why when men and women use cannabis that have PTSD, they say they feel normal because they literally replaced the deficiency they have in receptors in their brain. Now that's the science of it, and most doctors here in Canada and the States, they're not familiar with cannabinoid therapy because it's not something that College of Physicians or their Royal College that they go to school at. They don't teach them this. So I guess that's been a lot of the excuses I've heard, but I'm under the understanding a doctor's supposed to be a continued learner and look this stuff up. I don't have a university education at all, but it didn't take long. Talked to the lead research at NYU, Dr. Neumeister, who did all the research, that I'm speaking about, and it's documented. And I found that out, and I physically and mentally felt the change from 3 years of taking 9 pills a day, 2007 to 2010, and then trying marijuana, and first time in 3 years, my brain relaxed, my body relaxed, and I slept. Mind you, I greened out my first time is what they call it, is when you puke, because I couldn't get enough. It felt so good that I puked. But I haven't taken a pharmaceutical in 4 or 5 years. I don't need any pharmaceuticals. I'm plant-based medicine only. So yeah, that's what's going on. And now there's more than just marijuana for trauma in Canada. There's dozens of clinics that help people access this medicine now. And with legalization just around the corner next year, next July, every household will be allowed to grow 4 plants. Every human over 18 or 19 years old will be able to buy, marijuana and possess 1 ounce of marijuana on them. So there's big changes coming in our country, and I think it's all for the better. Um,
What
you
does
know, you,
what does legalization mean for the veterans?
well, to be honest, I think the only thing it really means is access for us again on top, because it's a mail order system right now, right? It's imperfect. It's very imperfect. Um, so imperfect actually. I received, when I ordered 150 grams of the medicine I need, I received 30 grams of some other person's medicine with my name outside the box, their name inside the box, and I was missing my order for the month. So by the time you send that back, the other person sends theirs back, and they send you another batch. You could be a week to 2 weeks without medicine. And when you get off all your other medication and you're only relying on cannabis, and maybe the mail system fucks up, or something like the licensed producer messes up, then the patient is the one left to suffer, and it's unfortunate. So with legalization for veterans, while we still may have to go pay out of pocket, I wouldn't have had to wait 2 weeks. I could have walked into a dispensary or a pharmacy of selling cannabis and got my medication. You see, like it can be very dangerous to have a severe PTSD individual be on a medication and then have it stopped and miss out on it because of a mistake that somebody made. That's not okay, and that still exists right now. And some people say, "Oh, well, grow your own." And yeah, okay, I can grow my own, and I will. The problem is, I didn't want to be stuck to a plant schedule. I didn't want to be a farmer. I'd like to travel and explore places. And when you have to grow your own and farm your own medicine, you can't really do those kind of things. So that's what's going on, and it's not so bad. These are not complaints. These are just little things that can be tweaked to improve. But it's pretty good up here right now, I gotta say.
Yes, from I've spoken to over six different veterans now, and
Yeah.
in United States, and they've told me that they are not reimbursed for any of their cannabis. It's all out of pocket. Even the license they have to get is they're paying for it. So for the veterans in Canada, they it's fantastic that our government recognizes that and reimburses them. It's 3 grams a day, correct?
Well, yeah, it's three. Well, I'm on 10. I use 10 grams of cannabis a day. It's 3 grams unless you see a special doctor or a specialist, a pain specialist or a psychiatrist, and it requires an extra letter of support. But yeah, they will pay for up to whatever your doctor tells. But upfront, 3 grams a day is correct,
And it
and
was 10,
we're
wasn't it?
grateful. But it was 10. So here's something fucked up: is that it was 10 grams a day for 2 years since 2014. They put it in their own policy, and then the Liberal government got in power, and last November, we were told we were given 5 months that the changes were coming. We're going to be reduced from 10 grams a day down to 3. So we only had 5 months to find a specialist, which is impossible where we're at. It's impossible. Um, and they didn't care that you got off all your other medication. They didn't care about anything, yet they were the people who put the coverage in place for 2 years. And they just arbitrarily, they say they have this research that says it's 3 grams a day. And I say, show me one research paper that has to do with wartime PTSD veterans using marijuana. and I'm going to call them a liar, that they don't have that, because it doesn't exist yet. They don't have a bunch of veterans that have PTSD from Afghanistan and Iraq go there, come back, use marijuana, and change their life. They don't have that data. Yet they claim they have some data that says 3 grams is enough. But how many lives got to be lost for it to be enough? I walked from New Brunswick to our Parliament Hill in Ottawa, which was over 1,000 kilometers, to raise awareness about the situation. They pulled the trigger anyways and reduced us to 3 grams. And less than 10 days later, one of my clients killed himself. So how many have to go? Where's the end? You know? So I have to choose to farm my medicine, and everybody has to learn how to farm now, and rely on your medicine that way. God forbid you lose a crop or something. But again, we're grateful for at least the 3 grams of coverage. It's I can't even imagine the boys down south. I've been to visit the Santa Cruz Veteran Alliance and the Weed for Warriors Project founder, and I've had the privilege of handing out little brown bags with about 5 grams in it to a few injured American veterans, and I was humbled to know that I get medicine delivered to my doorstep, and here these people are showing up under the cover of darkness outside to get a little bit of medication. And it was a moment, right? I felt bad and sorry for them, and why their government is still considering it a Scheduled 1 drug is beyond me. You know, it's a simple plant. It's not a simple plant, but it's a plant that has many medicinal values in many different ways, and it reduces harm. So while it's not perfect in any way, but it happens to be the best Band-Aid for a lot of illnesses and injuries.
When did Canada start reimbursing?
2000. So Canada actually started reimbursing like 15 years ago, man. This is the crazy thing. Since like 2001 or 2002, there was about 100 veterans in our country that had a license to grow their own, but they kind of did it on their own and never told anybody. And I guess they were scared maybe that it was going to get taken away. But in 2013, I was using cannabis on my own before MFT existed, and I was getting it from where I could get it, and that wasn't always fun. So when Canada announced in 2014, in March, that this access to cannabis for medical purpose regulations was in place, it allowed us to now, instead of growing your own like those 100 vets did for a decade, you had a choice. You could grow your own, or you could get it from one of these licensed producers. And, your product, dried, trimmed, cured, packaged, delivered to your doorstep, seems unfathomable, I'm sure, to many people that would listen to this. But and it was to me too. But when it comes, it's a feeling that is so
It's
reduces.
here.
It's unbelievable, the feeling when the package comes in the mail and you got your safety net for you're good for another month, and to not have that is it's just not fair. It's very cheap to grow cannabis. It shouldn't be $15 a gram or out of reach for people. There should be $5 or $4 gram cannabis that's affordable. But right now it's pricey, and it's tough for those who don't have coverage, which is everybody other than veterans.
Well, what implications arise when vets are trying to get approved? Like what disqualifies somebody?
So what would disqualify you is if you got prescribed for an injury in which you haven't been given a pension by Veteran Affairs Canada or Veteran Affairs in the States, I guess, when that comes. But the VA up here will not pay for anything unless they've given you pension, an award for your injury. Now, if you get prescribed any medication for that injury, they pay for it. Any treatment for that injury, they pay for it. There's 15 different programs of choice to pick from. Cannabis falls under program of choice number 10, and they pay for 3 grams of cannabis now. Under program number 12, they do massage. Under program 6, it's your physician, like psychology. They do all these things they pay for if it's to treat an injury that you got while you were serving in the military, and they gave you a pension for that. So that's the stipulation. If I hurt my right hand and it was after I got out or had nothing to do with military and that's what I got prescribed for, no coverage. Yeah.
So what about people who, let's say, quit the military, a
Yeah.
year later they get diagnosed with PTSD? They're still covered if they have a pension, correct?
Yeah, so that happens to quite a few guys. They get out, right? They don't want to deal with it, and they just say, "Get me out," and the army or military releases them sometimes through the cracks, and they shouldn't. But they see the symptoms and signs a year, 2, 3, 4 down the road, and they get diagnosed with PTSD, let's say from Afghanistan. At that point, then they can apply for a pension for PTSD because they have a doctor saying, "Look, this guy's is diagnosed, and he's now seeing psychology and all this stuff." So that warrants pension, a pension condition, and for that condition, whatever a doctor or anybody treatment you need, the Veteran Affairs will cover pretty much most of the cost. It's not something ridiculous.
Are Fabian, you're a veteran yourself, correct?
Yes, yeah, I served 12 years as a combat engineer. I got medically released in 2012 with PTSD and deployed twice to Afghanistan, twice to Haiti, once to Pakistan, and once to Africa.
Wow, you've been on a lot of deployments.
Yeah, I loved it, man. I did enjoy my job for the most part. It was a lot of fun. Uh, yeah,
Combat engineer.
yeah,
I know what that is because I'm armored reconnaissance, but people down who don't know about it, you mind telling a little bit about it?
yeah. Uh, in Canada, um, a combat engineer is a multi-disciplined individual who can build bridges, um, clear land, minefields, make clean water, build improvised roads, stuff like this. You can do a little bit of all of that, or specialize in some of those areas. I particularly um, I specialized in combat diving, which was fun, doing explosives underwater and shit like that. But in Afghanistan, the primary objective is clearing routes and improving routes, um, and that's what most of the combat engineers do when they deploy in places like Afghanistan. They are out in front of the infantry, clearing the routes so they can actually go through and fight the fight. It's I lost a few of my friends there to the improvised explosive devices. The Afghans are extremely intelligent. Um, they gather up 1979 Soviet era landmines that the country's rich of, take all the explosives out of them, put them in big, huge 5-gallon soup cans, put 105 or 155 projectiles on top, put it in a wadi, which is a ditch with water, and set up their IED, and it takes down $1 million, $2 million vehicles in a section of men. Women. Um, I've had it happen firsthand to people in our group, and they got us, man. First IED hit a group of us, and didn't hurt anybody, and we did our drills. But the second one, which is their primary objective, is their second IED. It got our guys, and it fucking killed 2 of them. It blew the turret off the vehicle, and blew the engine of the vehicle. A fucking mess. But they got us. They're smart. We invaded their country. We invaded their space. I don't understand what we were accomplishing there. Um, yeah.
Was Canada in the first, like the initial invasion, or did we come in a little later?
2002, 2001, 2002, we came in. I think we were maybe a little bit late, but pretty much up front. Uh, We were there with unarmored vehicles, not knowing we needed armored vehicles. We had these G wagons. You know what a G wagon is, and an Iltis. An Iltis. That Afghanistan's no place.
So sorry, can you repeat that? You cut out there that last part there.
An Iltis, a vehicle, a soft skin vehicle called an Iltis, since now retired. The G wagon replaced it, but we were in Afghanistan with those vehicles. Those soft skin vehicles, and we learned the hard way. Yeah, we need armored vehicles, and even having armored vehicles, it didn't cut it. So I don't think there was a win-win when you got people that are willing to kill themselves and lose their own lives, and it was, anyways, it was what it was.
It wasn't the kind of war like uniforms were worn on their side. Like
You could,
they blended right in, didn't they?
you could feel it going up your spine, but you couldn't pick them out because they're all wearing the same shit. At best, they were wearing black man jams, and that's your best, you know.
Best guess.
Fighting age males that's the target. They didn't have uniforms. If you're not wearing an ANP or an ANA uniform, you are the enemy. You're holding a weapon. So it was tough.
How involved was Canada in Iraq?
We weren't involved in Iraq too much. A little, like very little. There was no. I don't think we didn't deploy any combat troops, and we didn't partake in the invasion on any type of scale. Might have been just little bits, but our government at the time said no, we're not going to send troops to Iraq, and in turn we've sent troops to Afghanistan instead. And I don't think Afghanistan was any easier than Iraq was. I'm not saying that because I know. I just can't imagine it being too much more difficult. But
Oh, sorry.
sure.
Earlier you had said veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq, so I was just curious about which the people.
Yeah. All the veterans in Canada that I've seen over 2,000 that I know of are all from Afghanistan or prior to the Bosnian conflicts, stuff like that.
That was actually going to be my next question. What other conflicts have the Canada been in?
Well, the Medak pocket was a big one. Bosnia and Sarajevo. Um, you know, that's his. Well, we do have a real old Korean War vet, but our oldest client actually is 92, and next to him is a 79-year-old veteran that uses CBD for his pain, and it's crazy. It got him standing up straight and golfing. Pretty cool. He has some crazy stories. His name is Jimmy G. Um, yeah, so there's been a lot of conflict, but honestly, our headquarters is outside the training base, the combat training base for Canada, and all the combat arms are in around Gagetown, New Brunswick area, Petawawa, and Edmonton, in Valcartier in Quebec, and it's most people are from the Afghanistan conflict that I see. You start getting into the 40, 50, 60 year olds, starting to see some other type of conflicts. And not everybody has the wartime PTSD. Many people, I got some RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Uh, I got the firefighters, and people have been raped, assaulted. It's not all wartime PTSD.
And sorry, I didn't want to ask too many questions about your tour because some very personal stories. But is there any stories you'd like to share?
Oh. Mm.
Zero pressure.
Yeah, it's not so much the stories of the deployment, because well, those who have deployed and were actually in combat areas, they don't need to say anything. They know what it was like, and they also know You couldn't possibly comprehend what it was like unless you had your feet in the sand. But what I can say is I've seen some of those men and women that were completely broken and souls ripped out of their body, been given their life back through this plant right here called cannabis. Their entire life back, their soul put back in their body. And I've also seen a dozen people slip through our grasp in the last 3 years, and none of them had cannabis in their possession or in their system at the time, and they were using pharmaceuticals, and they're not here now. I don't have anybody out of thousands of people that have been using cannabis that aren't here. They're all here. They all actually have a soul and a say and healing and purpose again. When uh, you're asked to deploy for your country, and we go and we're willing to sacrifice and give up our life or roll the dice and do all this shit and not get treatment at a minimum when you come back. Yes, we'll fight for our financial payments, and yes, we'll fight for this and that, but to not get treatment, to not get life-saving medication for the things that these men and women were sent to do is utterly disgusting. I don't know how anybody in the government at the highest levels can sit at the tables and make these decisions and then go home and look in the fucking mirror and tuck their kids in at night. I don't know how they sleep. It's absolutely embarrassing. So while I don't have an individual story for you, I have so many that I couldn't possibly pick one. It's ridiculous. And it's all been changing through this here plan. It's not the healer. It's the first step. Then you can go towards treatment. Then you can go towards a maintenance plan and some other entheogenic therapies. There's other medicines in this world that are good heart medicine. Um, there's other groups using things like ayahuasca, DMT, MDMA, psilocybin. Um, there's a lot of medicines that can put you in non-ordinary states of consciousness and work in your soul work, heart medicine, when it's done in the right setting.
And
That's my
well, hello there.
yeah.
Yeah, people can't see what's unfortunately they can't see you, but you keep
Okay,
pointing to your logo there on
got
your
it.
you keep pointing to your logo there on your sweater and on your van behind there. That's
Yeah,
marijuana for trauma.
yeah. That's my vehicle. I drive around in this truck, and when I did 3 years ago, it was like a spaceship showed up. People, it made people talk, and question their own views on marijuana. And after they see someone in their family or someone they know completely change, they change their idea and their thoughts around it, and it's not so bad.
Fabian, you mind later on sending me a picture of that so we can put it up because that is it's a nice looking truck. I love your symbol of marijuana for trauma. You
Yeah,
you
man.
you had said your clinic is right near the base in Gagetown there. Are
Yeah.
are current serving members allowed to partake in this medicine they may need?
So it's funny. They are. The Canadian Forces tries to intimidate and pressure and say don't go there and you're not allowed, but they have rights. We have this thing called a Charter of Rights, and if that soldier was injured and went and seen a doctor outside the military and got prescribed cannabis, um, he is allowed to be using it, but he will be released from the military because of that. But most of these guys, they're getting out anyways. They're already being released. So we really try not to see or treat anybody that's still serving and wants to stay in the military. Then go do that. But we have this medicine for when you're on your way out of the military. You don't need to suffer that buffer period while you're waiting to get released. You should be able to get the right medication. So we help those people.
Do you think legalization in Canada for recreational purposes will change the views that Canadian military or government has on current serving members using?
No, I don't. I think it's still going to be strict. You know, people are dealing with explosives and firearms and stuff, and really, um, perhaps shouldn't be using cannabis or other prescription drugs. Perhaps, you know,
Right.
but I don't think legalization is going to change anything in the military's mind. It's a zero tolerance policy, and that means if you use it, you're breaching your service, and you will be released. So that's not going to change.
Right.
I shouldn't say that. You know, some person may want to challenge the military and their rights to be healthy and serve and use maybe CBD for pain instead of ibuprofen. So that might be the future, yeah, but I don't see that in the near future.
Right. So even someone who has a medical card before joining the military and applies to the military will see that card and say no.
It's discrimination.
Wow.
Yeah.
Marijuana for Trauma sounds like an excellent organization, and I thank you. Here in Winnipeg, we got one here in Winnipeg, and I hear good things about it. Do
Awesome.
you guys have any upcoming events you want to make known?
We're doing a Veterans for Healing um, retreat on Canada Day this year in New Brunswick. So it'll be mostly Atlantic Canadian veterans attending and families, but we got some cool things coming up this fall. It's time to start doing retreats where you can do maintenance plan stuff, learning about yoga and meditation and food healing, and you know there's a bunch of education to be had there that we want groups of veterans to go to and spend 4 or 5 days learning these types of things. And it's just more tools for the tool chest.
Besides medications, what are some very healthy ways of dealing with PTSD and the symptoms associated, in your
Yeah,
opinion?
like I think that yoga and meditation is huge. Needs to be a daily practice. Meditating should be a daily practice, and a lot of people from exercise, um, get relief of that buildup. Um, the one thing I discourage is turning to your addiction because that's what ends up happening. Is get triggered and you go back to whatever it is that can make you avoid and forget everything. So staying mindful and conscious awareness is important, and it's a practice. It's not something you can just pick up and do. That's why yoga is a practice. It's something you have to do on a regular basis, and changing your diet and your food habits maybe, or um, if you're a smoker, or less alcohol, these types of things are all contributing to symptoms of PTSD. Yeah.
What's your take on service dogs?
I think they're absolutely wonderful. I have quite a few clients and friends that have service dogs, and you know they're amazing. They really are tuned right in to the individual, the owner's anxiety. As soon as you get out of gear, it seems the dogs are right in the person's face, forcing them to confront, I guess, or take them out of their disassociation. But I think we could use more. I think there could be more service dogs. There's not enough around. A lot of guys are saying horse therapy is helpful.
Horse
I think,
therapy.
yeah, I heard quite a few guys saying horse therapy and helps with individual and with couples. Uh, there's not enough holistic healing offerings. Um, the traditional, you must come to an operational stress injury clinic, um, take our pharmaceuticals, do what we say is uh, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. You must. That's not the approach to PTSD. You must is I'm out of here. Not here are some offerings. Let's try multiples. Find what's most comfortable for you, keeping in mind that holistic healing has been um, the most advantage anybody with PTSD has done that I've seen in 3 years, not your traditional pharmacotherapy route. Now, there's a new thing. It's not new, I guess, but neurofeedback, the biofeedback, is cutting edge treatment for PTSD, and it's regulating your brain waves. Anyways, that offering is here in New Brunswick and in other provinces, but that could be stepped up a notch too. Also, one more thing, Jesse, is hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We have a lot of people with traumatic brain injuries from concussions from the blast, and enriching your blood with oxygen allows the blood to get to the injured part of the brain and regenerate dead brain cell growth. I don't know why this isn't. I think high level athletes use this. And, I don't know why it isn't on every military base as part of treatment, because it's just a pressurized chamber, and you put an oxygen mask on it. You're sitting there for an hour for 20, 30 treatments over time. And yeah, there's a lot of research out there on hyperbaric oxygen therapy.
Is
So,
this
like I said, yeah,
sorry?
go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, like, this isn't part of healthcare system. This is something like a private company does.
Yeah, exactly. And it should be part of healthcare. It should be part of at least the Veteran Affairs military system somehow. Um, to treat these brain injuries a little bit better. There's not much in the way of those offerings.
You
And
have your. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
and we have a lot of patients that have these type of injuries. You know,
So that would have to be out of pocket expense to go to one of these clinics.
it would, but it's free. We have one only in the Gagetown location, but it's free to use if you're a client. We don't charge anything for that. And yeah, people come, book their appointments, and we have somebody run the chamber and log their dives, we call it, and it's great.
How do
But yeah, it's not everywhere. So,
how do people get a hold of you?
um, well, the best is to go on to mftgroup.ca and contact me or our group that way. It's the easiest.
Sounds like you got a lot of great stuff going on for veterans and other people with PTSD.
We're just getting started here. I mean, we've only been doing this a few years, and there's years of research to do, and it's very, very interesting. And I want to explore more of the uh, facilitating and hosting and holding space type of work, um, rather than just educating on cannabis. There's more offerings out there.
And I know you got the thing this Canada Day. Any plans for legalization Canada
Yeah, you can bet that
Day?
we'll be having the largest celebratory event I can put together for our group on that day, because the end of prohibition, I don't think people understand how beautiful this day coming is. I don't think they appreciate it. I know a lot of East Coasts were really naive to cannabis, and they don't understand the beauty of this, the end of locking up the plant. It's going to be great for everybody, I think.
So that's gonna be a big party in New Brunswick.
There is. You're invited, Jesse.
Okay, maybe I'll jump in the car with the tent and
Yeah,
see you there.
we'll put you.
Well, Fabian, this has been great. Anything else you want to talk about?
Um, no, man, that's it. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate raising more awareness.
Well, you are more than invited to come back on. Um, love
Great.
to love to have you back on and maybe introduce you to a couple of the other organizations in the states if you don't already know them, and
Yeah, great.
have a great talk. This has been the Vapes4Vets podcast. Fabian Henry was joining us from Marijuana for Trauma, and you heard it here. He's gonna have a big party next year, so everyone get your tents, get ready to go.
You got it.
All right, thanks, Fabian. Talk to you soon.
Okay, take care, Jesse.